Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Andrew Robinson and I am a recovering audiophile. And if this is your first time to my channel, I would just like to say welcome. Welcome to the place where we talk about hi-fi music, art, and design. And if you're a subscriber or regular around here, welcome back. How are you? So today's video is another kind of just sit and chat because there is a question that keeps coming up on this channel that I feel is time to address and time to answer. And of course, that means we are talking about what it means to me to be a recovering audiophile. So several months ago, as part of another video that I did, I mentioned the phrase recovering audiophile, and full disclosure, Christy heard that in editing and thought, oh, you need to lean into that. And it was a great idea, and it continues to be a great idea. What Christy didn't know is that I've actually been kind of jokingly calling myself a recovering audiophile for the better part of a decade. And believe it or not, no one ever really questioned that. They might chuckle, they might laugh or whatever, but it wasn't until I started using it as the intro to all of these videos did a lot of the questions start to arise as to what does it mean to be a recovering audiophile. To me, I think recovering audiophile is on a global or grand scale. It's someone that has given themselves the permission to kind of get off the hamster wheel or just be happy with what you have. Because for the longest time, I, like maybe many of you, would work towards building a system and would build a system, would have it all, and for a fleeting moment would be happy, but then I would read the next review, or I would see the next this, or I would go to the shop the following weekend and see something else, and then immediately begin to sow the seeds of doubt in my own mind. And thus I would sit and listen to my system and constantly then pick it apart until I replaced something, until I quote unquote made it better. And in a lot of ways, I chased good money, good hard-earned money with bad, because I just never could find satisfaction, or I would never allow myself to be happy. That is, in many ways, an addiction. And we've talked about addiction before on this channel, so I'm not going to rehash that. You can go watch my video about audiophile addiction, but nevertheless, audiophile addiction plays into being a recovering audiophile because, in my opinion, trigger warning, I do think that the term audiophile is or has been co-opted in a negative way. And I don't know if I want to reclaim it. I don't know. I don't know if I would like to be known as an audiophile. I would rather be known as someone who appreciates art and music rather than someone that appreciates gear or how to set up gear or has the right combination of gear, because I appreciate gear on the artistic side of things. Like, I know many designers that are the engineers and designers behind some of the great products ever made, including products that are made today. And I consider these men and women to be artists. I really, really do. And I don't always like it when their work or what they create is distilled down to a spec sheet, because I think it kind of misses the point. Everything about this hobby, from the music and movies we watch and listen to the gear itself, is created by someone, and that someone has a passion for the recreation of what came before it. And as a result, if you make it just about the inanimate object, is sort of diluting or missing the point of what I feel is most important in this particular hobby, or this instance. Recovering audiophile is allowing yourself to get off of that hamster wheel of constantly looking at the gear as the thing that's supposed to solve all of the problems. And when you do that, and you start to look at the things that really matter to you, or really that you want in your life, suddenly priorities can and often do dramatically change. You know, for years, I would spend countless hours and countless dollars getting the next best, biggest, largest, most badass thing. And one of the downsides to that is that my room, the only room that I would have at any one time to sit and enjoy and relax, became very overwhelming. to me. And because the room existed to house the gear, not make me comfortable in the space that I am enjoying the music or watching the movie. And it became very difficult to focus on the music. It became very difficult to focus on movies because I was constantly kind of inundated with, here's really big speakers or a really big screen or this amp or several amps, multiple subwoofers, and it became its own kind of noise. I burnt out. I burnt out and I went broke, which we've also talked about on this channel. And so those are all of the things that led to the recovering audiophile mindset. And since kind of adopting that mindset, a lot of really interesting things have happened in my journey. And that's been one of the more eye-opening and exciting things about getting reinvigorated and re-involved in this hobby after a little bit of a hiatus was I am more surprised and more excited and more interested in what it is that I do now than I ever was. Like even when I had like the best of the best of the best stuff around me 24/7, there was nothing I couldn't get. There was nothing I didn't have access to. I was bored. But in kind of embracing this sort of like, what is it that I want? For example, like when I decided to get back into this, I asked myself, like, what is it that I want? And it started with, I don't want big, heavy amplifiers. So suddenly, for the first time in my career, I started paying attention to Class D amplifiers. And holy crap, it turns out they're really good. And it turns out that you can have all of these things. You can decide for yourself what it is that you want and what it is that's most important to you. And then cater your taste, cater your equipment needs to that. And I think that that's also a part of being a recovering audiophile, because an audiophile will tell you that it's not about necessarily what you want. It's about achieving the absolute pinnacle of perfection of performance, in which case, if that means you need to figure out a way to use an anti-gravity suspended turntable that only works on every third Thursday, then that's what you have to do. And anything short of that is a compromise. And that's just not true. That's just not true. That's not realistic. Because the truth of the matter is everyone that will tell you that you have to go to the nth degree for anything doesn't go to the nth degree themselves. It's not about chasing bit rates and pixels and frequency response. It's about, what do you want to listen to? What do you want to interact with? What's going to make you happy? I've caught a lot of flack on this channel from time to time because I'll advocate for something like a Crosley, or I'll show an Audio-Technica Bluetooth turntable, or we'll talk about a really cheap DAC. A lot of people are like, oh, how you can't say that, you can't do that, or all you're advocating for is lo-fi or mid-fi. And as a recovering audiophile in me, I'm just like, no, I'm advocating for people to be happy. That's what I'm advocating for. I'm advocating for people to be happy because honestly, and I think I've also said this in a prior video, the best anything you have is the one you have. The best speaker in the world is the one you have, because if there's a $200,000 speaker out there in the universe, but you're not there to listen to it, or it's not in your house to play music through, guess what? It doesn't make any sound. And the other thing too about it is understanding, along with the permission of allowing yourself to get off the wheel, the other thing about it is understanding that not everything is aimed at you. Not every review, not every product is meant for you. And I think this is actually something I wish someone had told me when I was younger, in my teens and in my 20s, because a lot of times you will read something and you will be like, yeah, I am in the market for, say, a 2-channel stereo amp or integrated. And there's this one that I have my eye on that I know I can afford, that I know is in my budget, and likely will tick all the boxes. And I've probably gone to the store 3 or 4 times to listen to it. But then I read this review and there's this one that's just kind of out of reach, it might be better. I didn't really have my eye on it. And suddenly it's like, now that's the thing. But then 2 weeks later, there's the next thing. And wouldn't you know it, every little thing always seems to get more expensive, a little bit further out of reach, which causes you a little bit more stress, anxiety over how are you going to stretch? How are you going to make that work? And if you can't make that work, what are you missing out on? And that all goes back into that wheel. But more than that, it's about realizing that not everything that's ever talked about, or not everything that's reviewed, or not everything that you may be exposed to is for you. And that's okay. And acknowledging that not everything is for you, and knowing that you can appreciate something and it still not be for you. Like, I appreciate Class A, single-ended triode tube amplifiers with no cages and blah, blah, blah. I appreciate that. I think it's audio jewelry, and most of them sound phenomenal, and I love them. Do I want to own them? Do I want them permanently as my daily driver? No. But that's just me. That's just me. I appreciate them. I am happy to play with them. I'm happy to share my thoughts about them with you. But I doubt I would ever live with a system like that. Because some days, most days, I want to say, hey, play this, or I want to pull out my phone, hit play and send it, or I just want to sit down and hit power and have my whole system turn on. Some days. And then other days I want to, get up there and fiddle with stuff. I want to have a physical relationship with the gear. But one thing I know I always want is I never want to feel like I'm sitting in a showroom. And I never want to feel like I'm having to live for my gear instead of my gear living with me. Being okay with what you have, and being okay that other people have what they have, and as so long as they're happy and they're not hurting anybody, as long as their amp's not falling on their kid, then to each their own. There's no right or wrong way to do this. There really isn't. And I think that is the last biggest lesson about being a recovering audiophile, is not being right, being wrong, or being okay with being wrong, being okay with being surprised, and ultimately understanding that there's no right way to do this. If it wasn't about your subjective experience, there would just be an amp. There would just be the speaker or a speaker. They would just make a television. I mean, think about that for a second. If it really wasn't about what it is that you personally like on a subjective level, then we just have one thing of everything needed to do the job. Or we just have one black box that was just called the audio thing. And then we'd all just have that. Because if it really was about performance, absolutely, that's not necessarily that difficult to do. We identify with what we buy. We identify with what we like. We identify with who we like to talk with, hang out with, be seen with. And thus, gear is no different. But understand that it's subjective. And as long as you're happy, and as long as the next person is happy with what they have, that's all that matters. That's all that matters. And not allowing yourself to get too worked up over that, not allowing yourself to become angry or stressed or worse over that, is one of the biggest things about being a recovering audiophile. That's very freeing, to go, yeah, I don't know everything. I don't. And I don't always have the right answers, and I don't always pick the right thing, but I know what I like, and I know what works for me. And if I can help someone who may be in that part of their journey take that next step without overwhelming them or without making them feel less than for it, that's all I care about. Yeah. And that's also why I close every episode with, the only person that has to like the sound of your system is you. That's the only spec that matters. As long as you're happy, that's the only spec that matters. Everything else is really noise. Hopefully it's good noise, but everything else is pretty much noise. So that's it, everybody. That is today's video. I know it probably wasn't the video you were expecting. To be perfectly honest, it wasn't one that I thought that I would make today, but it is a video worth making because so many of you inquire. Which leads me to my question. What does being a recovering audiophile mean to you? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you liked this video, please do give it a thumbs up, like, and a subscribe. And be sure to follow me on Instagram at The Recovering Audiophile. I'll link to all of that down in the description below. But follow me on Instagram. We do a lot of behind the scenes stuff. You can see what's coming and it's just another place for us to interact and talk about what it is that we like. So anyway, I got to get out of here and walk the dog. But thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I hope you guys are all doing well, hanging in there, and yeah, just being well. So let's get out of here. The only person that has to like the sound of your system is you. So thank you for watching, and until next time, we'll see you on the next video. Bye. Things even when we are talking about an amplifier or talking about a TV, because we are talking about hi-fi music, art, and design with TVs. With TVs. Yeah, I know. It's been a week, man. Where do you hide dirt in your feet? I just vacuumed in here and now it's dirty again.